Today we're here with Travis Bragg, who is one of my favorite branders, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about, well, branding, startups, owning his own business, all of that good stuff. So Travis, why don't you kind of start by talking about what you've done for the last 10 years?
Awesome. Well, great to be here. Love you guys. I've been running a distributed branding studio for the last 6 years and just recently wrapped it up. Decided I was ready for full-time creative again. For the last 6 years in particular, it's been a mind-blowing entrepreneurial extravaganza. Learned a lot. Learned how to run a business, learned how to run a business poorly, and then fix it, run it effectively, and then decide it wasn't for me for the time being. Mm-hmm. You know, it's sort of the nature of the startup world, which is what I love. Being with entrepreneurs, connecting with people who are doing incredible things, who aren't just saying they have a good idea, actually implementing on their good idea. And so in my business, what I loved most was supporting these individuals and sometimes small teams who were looking to bring their idea to life, to reality. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes they started in, a couple years in, sort of threw together a website and a logo and, made it work. Often became, profitable and were ready to take it to the next level. That's where I came in and went in and branded them professionally and helped them scale their businesses. So it's been an awesome ride.
Well, it's fascinating, super valuable for any of those companies. But let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So let's talk about the value of branding one of these companies. How does like creating a brand, for a startup really help take them to the next level?
Well, basically, great idea just stays that unless it gets promoted. The most brilliant idea on the planet isn't going to help many people if people don't know about it. So where branding and marketing in tandem come in is to sort of tell that story. And so where I saw my role was to dive into their mindset, figure out what they were doing, who their audience was, what their objectives were for the now and the later, and help them tell that story, ideally to, in most cases, generate sales, increase revenue, build that brand awareness.
I mean, it's super valuable. We all know,
Yeah. Marketing doesn't have to be evil.
No. It's more effective when it is, though.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. You can think of some of the most famous ad campaigns of our era. You think of Camel,
Sure. Lucky Strike.
Really good marketing,
Yep.
but dang, that was for a product that kills people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Marketing can be good for good or for evil.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think, when we kind of look at the beginnings of marketing, like Edward Bernays and, his ability to take Lucky Strike
Mm-hmm.
to an entire new demographic. I mean, granted, he gave an entire new demographic cancer, but...
Yeah. Not to keep harping on
cigarette
that
companies.
Industry, but now there's Juul, which
Right.
owns 70% of the vaping market now.
Yeah.
And their rise to fame was because they were, I think, first or second on the market.
Yeah.
And they targeted heavily to teenagers. And, they had flavors and colors, and they were the cool product. And so I guess there's something to be learned from some of the companies that are maybe not doing well
Right.
by their customers, but what tactics have they deployed that can be used for good, saving the planet?
Right. Well, it's interesting. We were in here earlier talking about climate change, and I think there's some good lessons to be learned from some of these ulterior motive corporations that can be applied towards more altruistic endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
So, despite that digression, let's dive into one of a little bit of a case study, right? Let's talk about one of your most successful clients and
Sure.
how your branding and your marketing and your strategy really helped take them to the next level.
Totally. There's a couple that immediately come to mind. I guess the most prominent client that is just known well is Reconciled It. And they're called Reconciled now. Basically, they were a profitable and successful SaaS startup founded by this pretty cool guy, Michael Lee.
He was on this.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's really epic entrepreneur in Burlington. And, he created this SaaS bookkeeping company that has grown leaps and bounds. So when I was brought on about a year and a half ago, they had an identity, they had a website, they had healthy revenue, and an audience that was growing. And they wanted to take it to the next level, as you said. And that's sort of an ambiguous term. What's the next level? Well, for me, what I needed to do was go in and understand what they were all about and where they wanted to go. And then take what was working and what needed to be refined in terms of their visual outreach and sort of refine it, elevate it, and align it with who their audience was. Their audience was primarily millennial-aged startups, entrepreneurs, often woman-owned, small enterprises. They needed a story, a visual message that sort of spoke to that audience. So we spent about 5 months together and sort of revamped their visual messaging from top to bottom. And visual messaging, you can think, first thing you think of is the logo, of course, but then there's sort of all the aesthetics that build that, the visuals, the color, patterns, and then the actual messaging itself. So like tonally, like what are we trying to say? So we wrapped up that project, and the company is just like skyrocketing. They are opening several locations now. They are getting a lot of like national praise and notoriety. That was a blast to work on.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into Reconciled. So, let's talk about like their color palette and how that marries in with like the tone and what they like in the way that they speak about themselves, about their copy on their website, and about their advertising.
Yeah, so one decision we made pretty early in was we were going to stay with the existing brand color scheme.
Okay.
They had built some brand equity in that already. And what we also determined in looking at some of their competitors in the field is that they were the only ones sort of using that particular color scheme.
So help them to stand out.
Yeah. And, so equity plus standing out, it's sort of like this burnt orange. Yeah. And it's not what you'd think of as a traditional, like color, for a SaaS company. You often think slick, greens, blues, grays, blacks, super hyper modern. And what I liked about this approach was we sort of kept it warm. Especially keeping in mind who the audience was. We wanted to be really open and inviting to the audience. We didn't want it to look too cool. And
you need to build trust.
Sure. Yeah. So there's always these considerations with, there's a certain point where like the brand could look too harsh, and then it could actually repel people. Yeah. So it's funny. Like I like to talk about color a lot in branding. Some people sort of think of it secondarily to other things, but to me, color is one of the most important things that matter in a brand, in the way a brand is perceived and identified. You can think of Coca-Cola as a great example. That Coca-Cola red is so identifiable. Airbnb, it's sort of like orangey color palette is very identifiable. I guess those are just two to name a few. Jolly Green Giant, what color is that brand? Just throwing it off the top of my head here. And so people associate color to messaging and to the tone, and it's sort of expressing something depending on whether it's hot magenta, or if it's like a soft blue, or if it's like a cream. What are those colors saying? They all say something different. Did that answer your question? I don't know. I went off on a color tangent.
No, I mean that's kind of what I wanted to do, was go off on a color tangent. So that worked out for us. Yeah, it did answer my question. So recently I've seen you get into a lot more kind of motion graphics and animation, and let's just talk about the value of how people are using motion graphics and animation, how you specifically use motion graphics and animation to help enhance brand narrative.
Totally. So I'll turn into like a little kid talking about motion graphics in particular.
Perfect.
I just love doing them. Aside from the fact that they're a blast to work on, they're extremely effective for converting. So, if you compare like a static graphic to something that moves, the human eye is just going to immediately gravitate towards the thing that's moving. It's human nature. You can't even help it. So that in and of itself is reason enough to sort of dig in on motion and video for any company that is sort of, looking to scale their marketing, their outreach. A little investment in motion and video is a really great way to go. Now, certainly it needs to be paired to a strategy, so motion and video for the sake of motion and video, it may or may not be effective. But what if you choose to go that route? The question is why. So why are we making this move? Who is the audience and what are they trying to get out of the brand? And then using motion and video to tell that story. So a static shot of like some food packaging, for example, that might look great and it might tell that story. But what if it was the same piece of content, only it was either video or motion, and rather than a package, it was someone actually opening that package. So you're seeing the whole story in that 5-second clip. Here's what the package looks like, static. Here's what it looks like, plus how it's opened and what it looks like after it's opened. There's a whole new level of depth there. Basically, long story short, video and motion is pretty much everything. If you want to be...
well, I mean, we like hearing that. Right?
Yeah, no, your team is doing what needs to be done in the modern era. Marketing, by and large, needs to include video and motion. It's just... You want to tell your story effectively, this is a great way to do it.
That's a lot of fun. I mean, I love doing animation too. I mean, it's kind of my favorite thing to do.
It's a blast.
It's really fun. Like when things work right too, when you're like, oh, I figured out how to like rig that the right way, and it's moving in the way that I want it to move. It's not like it used to be. Like it used to be that you would have to like hand draw everything and do like the cell animation, and you go through and like just kind of like sketch out what you want to see. Now, like you can do so much more, so much quicker and so much more effectively.
Totally. As a designer, I do like to storyboard to get my idea down on paper. And you can go super detailed with that. But once I have like a vision for the animation, for example, or for the scene if it's being shot, I like the organic process that comes after the sort of concepting, because you're gonna uncover all kinds of unique things that you didn't even think of when you were sketching on a page. Whether it's like tweaking the lighting or the angle or the perspective's wrong, or maybe this graphic would be more effectively moving this way, or that person's running animation looks kind of funny, like a robot instead of a human. It's just a fun process.
So let's talk about the future of design and what that's going to mean for companies moving forward, how they can embrace it, and what they can do to be out in front.
Yeah, so the future of design is, who knows? So one thing that I'm really excited about right now is voice-activated brands.
This is the second time it's gotten brought up today.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's, I guess, a good reason for that. Is they're nascent. It's a newer kind of way to share a brand. But a lot of futurists are saying that the future of the way we interact with our products is going to be all voice enabled. So could you imagine if you have a refrigerator that you can talk to, and there's an app associated to that refrigerator that, developer X put onto the fridge app store. And all you have to do is talk to your refrigerator and make a list of everything that you're out of. And so the fridge perhaps already knows what your staples are, and it knows when you're out of milk, and it knows when you're out of eggs and arugula.
I think this already exists.
Yeah, probably for a lot of money. If this exists,
for a lot of money.
Like I certainly don't have a talking refrigerator, but
there are smart fridges out there.
There are. So what I really want to talk about is the app that developer created for that refrigerator, creating this whole ecosystem where that could be a branded application for that refrigerator that's coming from a food purveyor. And this is a great way for them to get their brand in a whole new channel, the fridge channel in this case, to sort of put themselves front and center in front of their target audience, which is probably food eaters, all of us. So I guess what I'm trying to do is connect sort of the future where this is completely commonplace, where you're talking to any object in your household or your car, and it's sort of doing tasks for you.
Sure.
And how a brand can leverage that is sort of depending on who their audience is, fitting themselves into a particular product app store.
Right.
It's just one example there. Amazon is doing this. They're opening it, making it accessible to really a lot of people to be able to create a voice-activated application. Google's doing it, a few others, and I guess it's the future.
Does seem that way.
Yeah, for better or for worse. I don't know how many people want to be talking to everything in their household, but
Well, I think
we'll see.
that eventually what we'll see kind of like like Alexa, Home, Siri. Those will be the brain of the house, right?
Sure.
And everything will connect into those, and you'll say, "Hey Siri, ask the refrigerator if I'm out of milk." And Siri will be like, "Hey, you're out of milk."
Yeah.
Right? And it'll be interesting to see like kind of what the connection is with video, because there's gonna that's gonna be huge, right? I'm even seeing it on YouTube now, where it's like, okay, YouTube, pull up videos about how to change the oil in my car. Like you would think the casserole would want to be the first video that came up.
Yeah.
Right? And they probably are, because they probably pay for it. But that's going to be a big thing, and everything is going to have voice search. In fact, it kind of already does.
Yeah.
It's whether the smaller and younger brands are taking advantage of it. It's not even the smaller brands. It's like, we talk about it. It's kind of interesting. Like, video is really like the present, right? Everybody needs video. You have to have it. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be a major part of people's strategies moving forward. Has to be. And that's really moved into kind of like the present. But I do think voice is going to be the future, and the integration of the two, and I'm sure we'll move into AR and VR, and those things are going to, be a part of what we do in the video world, especially for motion graphics.
For sure.
It's going to be a big piece.
Yeah.
But I think about, okay, if I'm going to like integrate my fridge with the rest of my house, like I'm probably going to end up seeing commercials for the products that I want to buy, or for the stores that I'm a member of. I think about, Healthy Living, right? They offer a delivery service. Wouldn't you want your Healthy Living app on your fridge so that
Sure.
hey, refrigerator, order me milk. Okay, now it's coming from Healthy Living, because they have that delivery service. Amazon, I'm sure, is out in front on that with Whole Foods.
Yeah, no kidding. There's a reason why they dropped all that money on Whole Foods.
It was a lot. It was tens of billions.
Yeah.
13, something like that. It was crazy.
Something big. Yeah. And it's sort of interesting, like there's been a lot of assessment as to like, why did they do that? Like, what is their end goal here? I'm not going to say that I have any clue, but I have to imagine that it's merging their technology into a really critical staple of the American economy, which is food and the grocery channels.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it seems very likely. Right? And, with their delivery service, like you're in a big city, you can get same day delivery, like that's going to be giant.
Yeah. I mean, their vision is sort of like this seamless touch point for everything you need instantly. So, they are constantly trying to cut down their shipping time.
Right.
Part of that is they're distributing, they have more distribution warehouses closer to where their audience is. But when your audience is everywhere, how do you create a system that's instant? And that's where I think they're going with their technology. You brought up ads, so like being marketed to, and how that is, what the future of that could look like is kind of interesting too. Because targeting, the way you get your video, for example, in front of the right audience is through like optimization and targeting. But at the end of the day, like people don't really want to be marketed to. So how do you do marketing that is entertaining, that looks more like entertainment,
and that brings value into their life? Right.
And so I think every brand should be thinking about not just here's my sell slogan, but more like here's who you are and the values that matter to you, and we're just going to insert ourselves in gently.
Well, I think about that with Amazon and like with this whole like this grocery store kind of exploration that we're doing right now. To me, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a marketer, but like I don't mind being marketed to as long as that it's marketing the right thing.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's really like that personalization. So if my refrigerator is marketing milk to me and I'm out of milk, pretty happy about that.
Yeah, no, that sounds kind of like a dream in a weird way. It's just milk, but it's like that is seamless, and that's the other thing. How can we make this process seamless?
Right.
Like where there are just where again it's instant. It's a positive experience. It's one that brings a little bit of like joy to one's life.
Exactly.
I think that's everything. And certainly with motion and video too, it's like I want to be entertained. If you're gonna steal 20 seconds of my life or longer, give me something valuable. And if your service isn't for me, then please don't target me.
Right.
And target that person who that service is for. And so I think improved targeting, like even beyond where it currently is going to be the future. Because people, first of all, attention spans are short. If we're going to look at something, make it something that matters to us and keep it quick because I got things to do.
Right. And anything you can do to make my life easier. Yeah, I talked about this with Ted a little bit when we did our video blog, and he brought up something that was pretty interesting for me as a new dad. It's like, how often is the fight that we have with our spouse about us forgetting to get something on the way home from work, or and like now it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like, oh, we need diapers. Yeah. Alexa, order me diapers.
Yeah.
They're going to be Amazon branded, but
yeah. Unless you get specific with your query,
exactly,
which is a whole other thing with the voice recognition software.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we get that super, super good? I struggle with Siri still.
Siri's supposed to learn from you.
Yeah, she's not learning.
No.
Or maybe I just don't talk good.
I think I'm gonna just let that one go.
I also use Australian accent Siri. I just think that's awesome.
Nice.
You can change the accent.
I found Cookie Monster on Waze. That was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, see, that's entertaining.
Right, it's entertaining. That's what I want. And listen, I mean, Waze is a free app, but like they make money because they're entertaining. Because I got Cookie Monster telling me that there's a 7-Eleven coming up around the corner. And I'm sure that they're tracking my biometrics with my phone in my pocket. That's going to be huge. Like once you start, and then there's the question of who owns you. Like, do we own our own data?
Yeah,
do I own my biometric data? Probably, right? I
think it's a whole nother conversation, right? If we're talking about targeting, it's like,
right. We bring it back to design. It's like, what is the response that we're seeing from this design? If we can track people's biometric data while we show them new designs, like what do they think? What's the image that they feel?
Right, and how are they perceiving it? And is it making their blood boil?
Right.
Or is it like putting them into a state of calm? There's a whole nother topic about like, well, what about our data? And this idea of privacy doesn't even exist anymore.
No.
Did it ever? We just click yes, cool. We're not going to read through all that garbage. Yes, I want your application, whatever your legalese is. I'm cool with it.
Right.
And then it's like, well, what are we giving away? But then for what value?
Right.
Is our time being freed up?
Right. Is our time being freed up? Are we able to live a better version of our lives? I mean, I know that like my kid is gonna his whole life is gonna be voice activation, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's not even gonna be a thought for him. He's gonna have voice products everywhere. Something is gonna be tracking his biometric data from across the room. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah, it's scary to sort of like, do we just give in to this technological reality? Do we fight it? Do we try to make it work for us? I don't. This is a whole other discussion. Is like, what are the protections in place?
Right.
Consumer protections. It's important. Obviously, as marketers, we really we're in the business of selling products, but can we do that in a way that is honest, and is not, bullshit?
Right. Well, and I think that when we have the most success, it's because we're being authentic, right? Like I feel like when I see things not work as well, it's because there's a layer of crap on top of it, right? And we're too busy trying to manipulate people as opposed to give them something that they actually need.
Oh my God, you just triggered something for me. You want to know something that I think is total BS right now? Is the craft brewery movement being bought up by Anheuser-Busch and all these giant conglomerates.
Yeah.
And so you're at this point where you don't even know which small independent brewery is actually owned by one of these big dogs and which one is actually locally owned. And there's a frustration there for me. It's like we're talking about authentic storytelling. And how authentic is your story if your corporate overlords are, you know, writing the paychecks and more or less telling you what to do?
Story.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think there was this point where all these like small businesses were starting to gain a lot of traction, and you know, millennial demographics in particular are completely aligned with these small brands. You know, what does it mean to if all of our small brands are actually purchased by these larger brands? To me, it defeats the purpose and the reason why we fell in love with the small brands in the first place.
Yep.
So that's a whole other thing, is like how far do you scale before you become a brand that is less loved, you know?
Jeez. I know, right? I mean, I think it's a very fair question. And, you know, it's certainly something that I think maybe is for another blog post.
Yeah, probably.
I think that's a really deep question. So I think we'll probably call it here. I think we've gotten a lot of really amazing stuff. And honestly, it's been one of my favorite conversations.
Sweet.
Yeah. So...